Hey guys, tonight we step back in time, not to the glamour of Renaissance fairs or the fantasy of castles and dragons, but to the actual gritty, mucky reality of life in medieval times. You find yourself dropped into a world without toothpaste, without personal boundaries, and definitely without Google. The sun's not even up yet, and already your bed, scratch that, your straw mat, itches. The cold bites your fingers, there's a suspicious stain on your tunic, and the smell. Well, let's just say you know you're not in the 21st century anymore. This isn't going to be a heroic knight's tale. You're not a noble or a bard, you're the average person, and things are about to get really uncomfortable. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and what time it is where you're watching from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You come to on a thin, lumpy mattress stuffed with straw, and is that something crawling in there with you? The ceiling above you is wooden, low, and warped by dampness. There's no glass on the window, just cloth nailed over it, and the wind still whistles through the cracks. You breathe in deeply, and instantly regret it. Welcome to your medieval life. First, your head's heavy from sleep, or maybe from fleas. There's no alarm clock, just the distant clang of the village blacksmith already at work and a rooster that sounds personally offended by your existence. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and feel the cold earth floor beneath your feet. No slippers, no carpet, just dirt. Packed, dusty, worn dirt. You're in a small single-room house shared with 6 other people, 3 of whom snore like oxen. Privacy, not a thing. Personal space. Hilarious. You stumble out of bed and almost step into the chamber pot, which has definitely seen better days. You lift it, open the door, and toss the contents directly into the street. Everyone does this, which is why the town smells like it does. Your stomach grumbles, but more on food in the next section. Right now, let's talk about what's outside. The street is a narrow lane, packed with mud, manure, and chickens that may or may not belong to someone. The houses lean into each other like tired drunks. Smoke curls up from crooked chimneys, and the town crier yells something about a goat being stolen. Again, this is not the romanticized past. This is 14th century rural Europe, and it's cold, damp, and profoundly unglamorous. You stretch, trying to shake the stiffness from your limbs. It doesn't help. The mattress is a sack of straw, sure, but it's also probably got mold, insects, and at least 1 mouse in residence. No springs, no softness. And you slept in the same clothes you're wearing now because changing every day is a luxury only the rich can afford. You step out into the street and a man with 3 teeth and a cart full of onions yells something at you in an accent that's 40% anger and 60% spit. You nod politely. You don't understand a word. Historians still argue whether the average medieval villager bathed once a week, once a season, or only when rain and shame collided. Either way, you're not exactly fresh yourself. Soap exists, yes, but it's lye-based and burns if you get it in the wrong places. Also, it costs money, so most people just use water when available, and it's not clean at least. You try to find somewhere to relieve yourself again, because medieval food doesn't sit quietly in your stomach, and discover the options are behind the chicken coop, in the public ditch, or in the bucket next to someone's open window. You pick the chicken coop. It's a mistake. One of them bites you. You may now have tetanus. Now you're trying to blend in, but you're clean-shaven, your posture is suspiciously modern, and you still say, "Excuse me," when you bump into someone. A woman selling turnips eyes you like you just insulted her cow. A child throws a rock at your leg. It's just another morning, and just when you think it can't get worse, you hear the church bell. Again, that thing rings constantly. Time isn't kept by phones or even watches. It's kept by bells for prayer, work, meals, and judgment. And if you don't know what time it is, you're late. You shuffle toward the center of town, trying not to step on anything too squishy. Someone's yelling about taxes. Someone else is being dunked in a barrel of cold water. You're not sure if it's punishment or a baptism. A quick, quirky tidbit. Some medieval people used dried moss as toilet paper. Yes, moss. It's soft, it's absorbent, and it doesn't cost you a halfpenny. Honestly, it might be the one improvement over gas station single ply. You pass by a baker's stall, closed. Why? because bread must rest, rise, and sometimes be inspected for fairness. There's a whole thing about bread weight regulations where bakers could be publicly shamed for selling loaves that were too small. One city even had a bread cage where dishonest bakers were locked up for all to see. You're hungry, but rules are rules. You hear a ruckus behind the alehouse. Two men are wrestling in the dirt, one accusing the other of stealing his cow. The cow in question looks extremely bored. You back away slowly and realize you've stepped in something that isn't mud. You walk toward the village green, which sounds lovely but is actually just a worn patch of grass where geese fight and people occasionally try to sell you jars of suspicious ointment. A man with a long beard offers to trade you a cure for melancholy in exchange for your shoes. You politely decline. Your shoes are already terrible, but they're all you've got. As the sun climbs higher, it burns off some of the morning stink. Not all. Just some. You notice your hands are already grimy. You haven't touched anything, but grime finds you here. And the worst part? You've only been awake for 1 hour. Section 2. Your stomach growls again, louder this time. You look around, desperate for something edible. No vending machines, no cafes, no convenience stores glowing in the distance. What you've got is porridge, if you're lucky. Breakfast in medieval times isn't a joyful buffet, it's a survival task. The concept of 3 square meals a day hasn't arrived yet. Most folks get 2, one around mid-morning, one near dusk. Anything more is reserved for royalty, clergy, or very sneaky kitchen thieves. You head back toward your hut, or someone's hut, honestly, they all look the same, and you spot a pot sitting over what used to be a fire. Inside, a beige mass that might be barley or oats or a pile of damp sawdust flavored with tears. There's no sugar, no cinnamon, no milk, just heat and desperation. You taste it, it's edible, technically. This is pottage, the go-to meal of the masses. Think porridge, but with less joy and more turnip bits. If you're feeling fancy, it might contain leeks, onions, or beans. Meat? Not unless something recently died near your house. Even then, someone probably already claimed it. Historians still debate just how common meat really was for average villagers. Some argue people ate more than we think. Others insist meat was a rare treat unless you were nobility or a poacher with fast feet. What's certain is this: you don't have meat. Just mush. You try to imagine your usual breakfast, maybe scrambled eggs, toast, coffee. Then you look down at your bowl of sadness, and the thought vanishes. Even coffee doesn't exist here, not in Europe. Tea's not a thing either. You're stuck with small beer or watered-down cider. Yes, beer for breakfast, but don't get excited. It's weak, warm, and full of floaty stuff. You ask where the water is, and a woman points to the stream behind the tanner's shack. You go there. You shouldn't have. The water smells like feet, rot, and old sheep. That's because it's downstream from the tannery, and tanning hides involves urine and brains, not metaphorically. Literally, you back away slowly and remind yourself not to drink anything unless it's been boiled, blessed, or fermented, which brings you to ale. It's flat, cloudy, and sour, but it's safer than water. Children drink it. Pregnant women drink it, you regret it. You try to help with breakfast cleanup because politeness is still your thing, and discover that spoons are personal property. You don't share utensils here. People carry them tied to their belts. You reach for one and get smacked with a broom. You now understand medieval cutlery is sacred. Another quirky fact: forks are borderline evil. Most villagers don't use them. They're foreign, devilish, or just plain confusing. Eating is done with a spoon, a knife, and your bare, probably very filthy hands. Bon appetit. After eating, you're expected to contribute to the day's work, but you're still thinking about food. What happens if you want a snack later? Well, let's explore your options. First, there's hard cheese, not the creamy, dreamy brie of your dreams. This cheese is like a rock that smells faintly of barn. It'll keep for months, if not years, but biting it may chip your only intact molar. Still, it's a prized possession. People pay taxes in cheese. Next, maybe a hunk of stale bread. You knock on it and it sounds like a coffin lid. That's because it's a week old. Bread is often baked once a week, and by day 6 it doubles as a weapon. You dip it in broth to soften it, or in your ale if you're desperate. Finally, fruit. But only in season. There's no global supply chain shipping you strawberries in December. You get what grows near you when it grows. Apples, pears, maybe berries, all gathered from bushes guarded by very territorial geese. You're still hungry, so you wander toward the marketplace, if your village even has one. It's not a mall, it's a muddy clearing with stalls made of sticks and angry grandmas. They sell turnips, onions, garlic, more turnips, and sometimes pickled eel. A man offers you a meat pie. You're excited, until you learn it contains whatever got caught in the trap. That could be rabbit, could be rat. Could be something he won't name while making aggressive eye contact. You decline. Suddenly a group of children chases a runaway pig through the square. It's squealing, they're laughing, you're just trying not to get trampled. The pig escapes, the crowd applauds. Apparently, that's the entertainment. As you step over a cabbage, you spot someone carrying a large wooden tray of eggs. You haven't seen eggs yet. Maybe today's you're lucky. Nope. He drops them, all of them, right into a pile of fresh manure. People groan. Someone cries. A goose honks with menace. You give up. You sit on a rock, your stomach still half empty. You wonder how anyone survives like this. And then you remember, most of them don't. Malnutrition is common. Rickets, scurvy, and anemia make people short, bent, and pale. Childhood mortality is so high that many babies aren't named until they're 2. Think about that. But here's a fringe tidbit. Some wealthier villagers believed certain foods could heal or harm depending on your body's humours. Eat too many cold, wet foods like cucumbers and you might become melancholic. Yes, sad because of salad. Medieval science at its finest. You rise from your rock and stretch. Hunger lingers, but work awaits. That's how life works here. Eat just enough to keep moving, then move until you can eat again. As you head toward the fields or the blacksmiths or wherever you've been volunteered, someone offers you a bit of bread smeared with something brown. You ask what it is. He smiles. Pigeon paste. You take a bite. It's not the worst thing you've eaten today. Section 3. You take a deep breath to steady yourself, and instantly regret it. The scent of medieval life is not something you adjust to, it's something that chases you, climbs up your nose, settles behind your eyes, and refuses to leave. You might have thought, naively, that the countryside would smell fresh, but no, it smells like earth, sweat, smoke, and secrets no nose should ever know. You try to pinpoint the sources. Let's start close to home. Literally, hygiene is minimal. Most people bathe once a season, some only at baptism. Soap exists, but it's made from animal fat and ash, and it smells like burnt bacon mixed with despair. Most people settle for scraping off the top layer of grime with a damp cloth. You, meanwhile, haven't showered in, well, ever in this scenario, and it's starting to show. Now the clothes, remember you haven't changed them. Your underclothes, if you have any, have been worn for days. Maybe weeks. Linen doesn't lie, especially when soaked in sweat, hay dust, and open-air cooking smoke. You now smell like someone tried to bake soup inside a scarecrow. Historians still debate just how stinky medieval folks were compared to modern people. Some argue we exaggerate, others say we don't even come close. What's clear is that cleanliness had more to do with social status and local customs than with any universal standard. Monks might bathe weekly, peasants, not so much. And no one has deodorant. Now walk through your village. There's the tanner's shack. Tanning leather requires urine, not metaphorically, literally. People collect it in jars and sell it to the tanner, who then soaks hides in it for days. It ferments, it festers, and the smell is powerful. You instinctively gag. A man next to you just nods solemnly and hands you a cloth to cover your mouth. He's been here before. You turn a corner and encounter the fishmonger. Open barrels of eels slither and burble in cloudy water. Crusty scales flake off onto the dirt. A cat, half-blind and very determined, stalks the pile. The air is thick with salt, rot, and ambition. Further along, the butcher's stall offers no refuge. Meat hangs on rusty hooks, swaying in the breeze. Flies cover it like a second skin. There's no refrigeration, of course, just hope, salt, and prayers. You see a slab of something grey-green and wonder if it was meant to be that colour. A nearby privy stands half open. You peek in, then wish you hadn't. It's basically a pit in the ground surrounded by rotting wood. No privacy, no paper, just a communal stick. Yes, a wiping stick, shared and rinsed in cold water between uses. You back away quickly and make a mental note never to sit anywhere in this town. Then you remember that most people don't use privies anyway. They use chamber pots indoors and throw the contents out the window. Gardez-l'eau, they might yell in France. Mind the water, as if that helps. You check the skies like it's medieval weather. 30% chance of excrement, 100% chance of regret. A quirky historical tidbit. Some towns had piss corners, dedicated street spots where men would relieve themselves. It was both convenient and horrifying. In some parts of England, these corners became known by names like Pissing Alley. Charming, right? And what about animals? They're everywhere. Pigs roam free, rooting through garbage. Dogs wander the streets, half pet, half scavenger. Chickens flutter past you, clearly angry about something. Horses do their business in front of the church steps. No one cleans it, not even the priest. Speaking of the church, it smells too. Incense tries to mask the odor of 100 unwashed bodies crammed into pews every Sunday. It fails. Miserably, the smell clings to the wood, the stone, the fabric of the priest's robe. You wonder how anyone concentrates long enough to sin. But the worst smell, it's not the animals or the outhouses or even the tanneries, it's death. You pass a house with a black cloth tied to the door. Inside, someone's passed away. You don't ask how, you don't want to know. The body might sit there for days until it can be buried. Maybe it's wrapped in a shroud, maybe not. There are no embalming fluids, just time and flies. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly used to death or just resigned to it. Either way, funerals are quick, burials are shallow, and graveyards often flood. Sometimes bones resurface, literally. The smell of rot lingers in the damp corners of every village, and if you think you've escaped it, congrats, that's just someone cooking cabbage nearby. You try breathing through your mouth, but then taste the air, and that's not better. Someone offers you a sprig of rosemary to tuck into your collar. That's how folks tried to fight the smells. Herbs, posies, even oranges stuck with cloves. Plague doctors, centuries later, would stuff their beaked masks with strong spices, thinking foul odors spread disease. They weren't totally wrong, just slightly confused on the mechanism. You tie a clove around your wrist and pretend it helps. It doesn't. You shuffle away from the main street, hoping for relief. You find the stable. You leave immediately. That's all you need to know about that. Then you reach the communal well. Finally, fresh water. You kneel down, cup your hands, and someone tosses a bucket of manure nearby. Splash, the wind shifts. You taste it. Congratulations, you've been baptized into medieval reality. You stumble back toward your hut, dazed, mildly nauseous, and now officially local. A woman passes by with a baby on her hip and a basket of onions on her head. She doesn't even flinch. You realize this is normal. You are the weird one, for gagging, for washing your hands, for missing your shampoo. And just when you think it can't get worse, someone starts boiling cabbage. Section 4. You return to your hut, hoping for refuge, but the chill has crept in deeper now. There's no insulation. No heater, just the sharp bite of morning air swirling through gaps in the wood and around your bare ankles. Time to get dressed. Except you're already halfway there. You slept in your clothes, remember? That coarse linen tunic. It's damp with sweat and has a straw sticking out the collar like a proud little flag. Your outer garment, a woolen overcoat or surcoat, is wrinkled, itchy, and smells vaguely of sheep. You hesitate to put it on, but then the cold decides for you. There's no wardrobe, just a hook if you're lucky. Most villagers own only one full set of clothing, maybe two if they're relatively well off. And clothing is not user-friendly. There's no stretchy waistband, no zipper, and certainly no soft cotton t-shirt. You wrap a woolen belt around your waist to keep everything in place. It's mostly decorative, you're still cold. Now let's talk undergarments. If you're male, you might be wearing brays, linen shorts that tie at the waist and the knees. If you're female, it's a long shift. In both cases, changing them is a special occasion. Washing them is an event, and drying them, you hope there's sun. You grab your shoes, turn shoes made of leather, worn soft with age. They offer all the foot support of wet cardboard. The soles are thin, the sides sag, and the insides are still damp from yesterday's mud. No socks. You slip them on and instantly feel every pebble, twig, and regret. You tie a linen head wrap or coif around your hair because keeping lice out is a full-time job. Doesn't work though. Everyone has lice, even the lord of the manor. Even the priest. You're new, but give it a day. Historians still argue how much effort medieval people actually put into their daily dress. Some records suggest villagers were proud of their appearance, even stylish within their means. Others imply they wore whatever didn't have holes or fleas. It probably depended on your region, your trade, and your ability to avoid pig manure. You step outside squinting into the pale sun. Your neighbors eye you with mild suspicion. Something about your shoes isn't quite right, and your tunic is too clean. You try to look casual. You scratch your neck. That helps. Someone calls out from across the street. It's your neighbor, Edric maybe, holding up a stained apron and yelling about firewood. You nod and wave. You're not sure what he said, but it sounded urgent. You trudge toward him. The mud swallows your shoe halfway. You tug. It stays. You hop on one foot, nearly fall, and then finally yank it free with a squelching sound that echoes deep into your soul. You arrive at Edric's hut. He hands you an axe and gestures toward the woods. You understand. You're chopping wood today. You nod. You turn to go, and he tosses you a woolen cloak. It smells like wet dog, but it's warm. You feel briefly grateful. Then you notice something moving in the hem. You make your way toward the forest edge, stepping carefully over puddles and avoiding geese, vicious, flapping creatures who guard the village like drunk sentinels. You reach the woodpile and see another man already working. He's wearing a tunic tied with a bit of rope and shoes that look like they've been passed down 4 generations. He barely glances at you. You raise the axe. It's heavy, unbalanced, and the handle has a splinter the size of your future. You swing, you miss. You try again, you split a log, barely. The other man grunts approvingly. You feel like a hero. A quirky historical tidbit, medieval villagers often used wooden clogs outdoors in muddy seasons. They weren't fashionable, but they kept your feet dryish. Think of them as early crocs, but louder and more dangerous. You work for an hour, then 2. Your back aches, your hands burn, the sun climbs higher. You remove your cloak, then put it back on, then off again. The temperature is as moody as a teenager in winter. You notice the other man has stopped. He's sharpening his blade with a piece of stone. You don't have one. He offers his. You thank him. He doesn't understand the words, but he understands the nod. Historians still argue how much interaction villages had with each other. Some were isolated, barely knowing neighboring towns existed. Others traded weekly. But one thing's clear. If you didn't know your neighbors, you were vulnerable. Everyone pulled together, or everyone suffered. You trudge back to the village with a bundle of wood strapped to your back. Your shoulders scream, you can barely feel your fingers, and then it starts to drizzle. Not rain, just enough moisture to make everything cling to your skin and sag. Inside your hut, you drop the bundle and flop onto the stool. The stool breaks. You sit on the floor instead, your knees crack like kindling. You reach for your woolen hood and wipe your face. It's covered in soot, sweat, and something yellow. You don't ask. You realize with slow horror that you'll be doing this every day. No rest days, no weekends. Sunday is for church, not Netflix. The Sabbath offers no spa treatment, just more kneeling, more incense, more firewood. And yet, as the fire finally crackles in the hearth, you feel a strange satisfaction. You earned this heat. You earned this scratchy blanket. You earned every splinter in your hand. It's uncomfortable, but it's real. And hey, at least you didn't step on a rake. Yet. Section 5. The fire crackles, but the warmth barely reaches your toes. Outside, the village is alive with motion. Chickens dart, a cart squeaks by. Somewhere, a dog barks at nothing in particular and then keeps barking, but none of it matters now. You've got work to do. Not optional work, survival work. Medieval life doesn't wait for your lower back to stop aching or for your breakfast to settle. Once the sun is up, so are you, and everyone expects you to contribute. You glance around for tools. There's a rusted hoe, a wooden rake, and something that might have once been a pitchfork, now more bent than useful. You choose the hoe. Fewer splinters. Today's task: farming, or helping someone farm, or being mistaken for someone who should already be farming. It's hard to tell. A man with a neck like a tree stump points you toward a field. You obey. This is open field farming, the system that ruled medieval agriculture. Picture giant fields split into strips, some owned by the local lord, others shared by the village. No fences, no personal plots. Just community toil. You're assigned a strip. It looks like it hasn't seen water or luck in months. You start to hoe. The earth is hard, clay-like. It resists you, and you're pretty sure it's winning. Your shoes fill with mud again. Your back bends at a new and deeply troubling angle. Historians still argue whether peasants found community life fulfilling or crushing. Some records hint at camaraderie, shared tasks, festivals, neighborly help. Others mention exhaustion, starvation, and that delightful thing where you owe 40% of your harvest to someone who's never lifted a spade in his life. You pause, sweating already. Someone nearby is ploughing with a team of oxen. You watch, mesmerized by their slow, rhythmic steps. Then the man shouts at you, "Right, back to your own dirt." Your hands develop blisters. The sun climbs higher. A woman brings water in a clay jug, lukewarm and slightly gritty, but you gulp it down like ambrosia. She says something in the local dialect. You nod, unsure if you've just agreed to marry her cousin or sell your soul for another sip. You continue to hoe. Your arms begin to tremble. This isn't gym exhaustion. This is your muscles are writing their wills exhaustion. You daydream of a break, of sitting under a tree, of sipping lemonade. Then you remember, no trees nearby, no break, no lemons, a quirky tidbit medieval farmers sometimes planted according to astrology. That's right. The stars told them when to sow barley or harvest beans. If the moon wasn't in the right phase, you didn't plant, even if the soil was ready and your bones were screaming. Someone yells again. This time it's about sheep. You drop your hoe and hobble toward the sound. A group of villagers is herding a small flock that's doing its best to go anywhere but toward the pen. You're handed a stick, you wave it. Uselessly, one sheep escapes, another bites your tunic. The third just stares at you with ancient contempt. Eventually, the sheep are penned. You've helped. Kind of. Your reward, you get to carry a sack of grain to the mill. It's heavier than your optimism. The mill sits by a slow-turning water wheel. Inside, flour dust fills the air. You breathe it in and instantly cough. The miller gives you a long, wheezy laugh. He's missing several teeth and one eyebrow. He shows you how the grinding works. Two massive stones, spinning with the flow of water, slowly pulverize the grain into flour. It's hypnotic. You watch too long. The miller smacks your shoulder and points at the grain sack. Right. Back to lifting. Historians still debate how much autonomy peasants had in their work. Some could trade, own tools, or keep livestock. Others were serfs, legally bound to their lord's land, meaning they couldn't leave, couldn't marry without permission, and definitely couldn't daydream while flour poured everywhere. By midday, your clothes are soaked through, your feet hurt. Your arms tingle. You look down and realize your hand has started to bleed from a cracked blister. No band-aids. Just dirt, and maybe a cleanish rag if someone's feeling generous. You trudge back to the village square. Someone offers you a chunk of bread. You accept. It tastes like sawdust and sadness, but it's fuel. You chew slowly, pretending it's cake. It doesn't help. Then a bell rings. Not a school bell, not a lunch bell, a work bell. It's just a reminder. Time is moving, and you need to keep up. Rest is for the rich or the dead. Someone taps your shoulder and points to a pile of firewood. Another task, always another task. You nod, numb. You lift a log, then another. You try to remember a life with soft chairs, indoor plumbing, and ergonomic keyboards. It feels like fiction. The afternoon stretches on. You haul hay. You fix a fence with sticks and hope. You nearly step on a snake. You help dig a trench that seems to go nowhere but still has to be dug. There's no manual, no schedule, just people shouting and pointing. You obey. Because that's what you do now. And somehow, you begin to blend in. Your hands are dirty, your hair matted, your clothes torn, but no one notices. Or maybe they do, and now you're finally normal. You sit for a moment, just a moment, on a stump near the well. Your breath is ragged. Your heartbeat thuds in your ears. Someone walks by and hands you a pear. You take a bite. It's sour, but fresh. It tastes like a reward. And then someone yells about the chickens again. Section 6. You're bent over, sweating, sticky, and trying to convince your fingers to uncurl from the log you just carried when a shout rings out from the other side of the village square. You look up. A man in a long tunic and leather boots is pointing at you. He's flanked by two others, both holding what might be cudgels, or just very large sticks. Their eyes narrow. Uh-oh. The man yells something about land and chickens and trespassing, and you suddenly realize something important. You've definitely broken some law. You just don't know which one. In medieval times, rules were everywhere and rarely written down. You couldn't just Google what not to do in the 1300s. The laws varied by region, by lord, by whim, and by weather. Stepping onto someone's field? That could be theft. Picking herbs near the wrong hedgerow could be poaching. Breathing too loudly during church. Sin punishable. Someone hands you a stick with feathers tied to the end. Is this a punishment, a ceremony, a very confused sport? You nod, slowly. A woman nearby mutters that you shouldn't have walked past the mill without bowing. You didn't bow. That's on you. One man suggests dragging you before the reeve. The local official who settles disputes, collects fines, and occasionally watches public beatings like it's a dinner show. You panic quietly. Historians still debate how consistently medieval justice was applied. Some villages enforced law through community consensus. Others had brutal top-down systems. Either way, justice wasn't blind. It had muddy shoes and a suspicious stare. You try to apologize, but your accent is wrong and your vocabulary's worse. So you mime. You bow deeply, then again, then a third time for good measure. One of the men grunts. The tension breaks. They walk away, muttering. You're safe, for now, but your lesson's been learned. Everything is regulated. You can't just exist here. You have to know the rules, even the unwritten ones. For instance, bread laws. That's right, bread had rules. If a baker sold a loaf that was too light, he could be fined or publicly humiliated. Some towns even used bread cages, wooden devices where dishonest bakers were displayed like shameful baguettes. Or sumptuary laws, which told you what you could wear based on your class. Fancy fur trim, illegal for you. Too much embroidery? Take it off, peasant. You might be fined, or worse, accused of pretending to be nobility. Which could land you in the stocks, or, if the local lord was in a mood, result in a few lashes. You pass by the alehouse and notice a sign painted with a crude mug of beer and some Latin that you absolutely cannot read. That's not just branding, that's a legal requirement. Alewives had to mark their doors to show they were licensed to sell. If they watered down the ale, punishable offence. Then there's church law. You're expected to attend Mass, not once a week. Every day, if possible. Miss too many, and the priest might pay you a visit, with questions and judgment and the suggestion that you've been flirting with the devil. That's not a metaphor. A quirky tidbit. Medieval towns often had watchers who ensured people were behaving morally. Think of them as early neighbourhood patrols, but instead of checking for burglars, they reported you for dancing on Sunday or skipping Lent. As you shuffle through the square, someone offers you a bowl of stew. You thank them, but then realize you've committed another sin. You ate before the local bell ringer announced the mealtime. Now you're officially suspicious. Gluttonous, maybe. Maybe even possessed. You hear a child whisper, "Witch." Great. Another law. Don't travel at night. Especially without permission, you could be mistaken for a thief, or worse, a spy. The penalty. Anything from being escorted home with a lecture to being shackled in the town square while children throw cabbages at your face. You pass by a hut where a man is being publicly humiliated, not beaten. Just yelled at while wearing a big wooden collar, the pillory. People toss old vegetables at him. A goat licks his foot. His crime? Allegedly taking extra turnips from the communal garden. Historians still argue whether public punishment was more about justice or entertainment. Likely both. Medieval life didn't offer much in the way of TV. A public shaming was half courtroom, half social event. Bring the family. You finally reach your hut, nerves frayed and heart racing. You sit on the wooden bench, gently this time. You replay the day's events, at least 5 laws broken, 3 unspoken rules violated, and 1 stew eaten prematurely. And just as you're about to close your eyes and rest your aching brain, someone knocks. A messenger. You're summoned to court. Well, not a real court, not like with wigs and gavels, just a small room with the reeve, the local priest, maybe a grumpy neighbour or two. You sit awkwardly while the reeve scowls. He asks questions you don't understand. You answer with nods, shrugs, and desperate smiles. Eventually he fines you, 2 pennies, you don't have any. So instead you're ordered to help repair the bridge this week. Extra labour, no extra food. You nod, you bow, you leave. One more law. Don't cry in public, it's not written down, but everyone's watching. And medieval sympathy? Rare. Section 7. You wake up to your lips swelling. Not emotionally, literally. You try to speak, but your jaw aches and something inside your mouth feels wrong. A sharp jolt of pain erupts when you prod your cheek. It's a tooth, or rather what's left of one. Welcome to medieval healthcare, more faith than function, and about as sterile as a plague rat in a prayer circle. Your first instinct is to find a doctor, but here, doctor can mean many things. It might be a travelling barber who doubles as a surgeon, it might be a village wise woman with herbs and prayers, or it might be Brother Edwin, the local monk who treats wounds with scripture and wine. You opt for the monk. He lives near the church, in a small stone room filled with scrolls, candles, and what looks suspiciously like dried lizard tails. He examines your jaw, mutters something in Latin, and reaches for a wooden stick and a leather strap. You try to back away, but he reassures you. Leeches, he says calmly. To draw out the humours, yes. Leeches. Historians still debate how effective bloodletting really was, or whether it helped at all. Medieval medicine was based on the 4 humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Your health depended on their balance. Too much blood, you get a nosebleed or a leech. Too much black bile, congratulations, you're melancholic and must drink mint tea while contemplating mortality. The monk places the leech on your neck. It wiggles, you gag, it latches on. The pain in your jaw doesn't improve, but now your neck itches and you're bleeding slightly. Progress? He then gives you a foul-tasting concoction of boiled bark and garlic. You down it because the alternative is letting the blacksmith pull the tooth with iron tongs, his side gig on weekends. The potion makes your stomach gurgle ominously. Great. A quirky tidbit. Some treatments included applying crushed emeralds, powdered mummy, yes really, or wrapping yourself in the hide of a freshly killed animal. If you were noble, you might try all 3. Outside the church, a woman clutches her side. She's pregnant, maybe just sick. The village midwife arrives, a wizened woman with hands like bark and a bag of herbs. She offers no comfort, just instructions. She's delivered babies, set bones, and probably cast a few curses in her time. You notice a man nearby with a missing hand. No one mentions it. You later learn he lost it during an amputation party. That's when someone gets drunk enough to let the town's sharpest axe solve an infection problem. If the bleeding stops and the wound doesn't rot, he lives. If not, well, funerals are cheap. Historians still argue whether medieval people had access to true medical knowledge. Some monasteries kept detailed records. Islamic physicians were centuries ahead in surgical tools and treatments, but in rural Europe, you were lucky to get someone who didn't think sneezing was caused by sin. You shuffle home, jaw throbbing, stomach queasy, leech still partially attached. Someone hands you a cloth soaked in vinegar to press to your cheek. It stings. They nod approvingly. Your neighbour says his cousin was once cured of a fever by sitting naked in a smoke hut and then being dunked in a frozen pond. You believe him? You shouldn't. You pass the apothecary. It smells like burnt mint and disappointment. Inside are jars of dried frogs, beetles, sulphur, and what might be a human finger. The apothecary offers you a salve, ground snail shell mixed with pig lard and nettles. You smile weakly and back away. Back at your hut, the monk returns. He wants to check your humours again. You lie and say you feel better. He's pleased. He gives you a piece of parchment with a handwritten prayer. You hang it over your bed, hoping divine protection includes dental coverage. Night falls. The fire crackles. You try to sleep, jaw still aching, breath questionable. You dream of toothbrushes, and just when you think you've seen it all, a man bursts into your hut with a goose under one arm and a look of wild panic. His brother's leg is broken, and he needs help. You follow him to the field where the injured man lies groaning, leg bent like a question mark. A group has gathered. The blacksmith arrives, hammer in hand. He looks at the leg, frowns, and mutters something about realigning. You help hold the man down. He screams as the bone is yanked back into place. Then a board is tied to it. That's the whole treatment. Someone hands him ale, someone else prays. Someone steals the goose, a fringe practice. In some places, people believed illness came from demons, the cure. Drill a hole in your skull to let the bad spirits out. It's called trepanation. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes people died screaming with holes in their heads. You limp home, mind spinning. One bad tooth has become a full tour of medieval medicine, and it's only Tuesday. You collapse on your straw mattress, cradling your jaw. The prayer parchment flutters slightly in the breeze. You whisper a modern curse, then follow it with an ancient prayer, just in case. Section 8. The church bell tolls. Again, you wince. Not from your jaw, though it still aches, but from the sheer force of habit the bell commands. You've heard it every hour, every day, since your arrival. Like some divine alarm clock, it rings not just to mark time, but to shape it. You feel it in your bones now, you hear it in your dreams. This time it's calling you to mass. Not optional, not even close. You shuffle toward the chapel, along with a river of tired villagers, all wrapped in their scratchy wool and holy obligation. The building is simple: stone walls, wooden roof, a small bell tower. Inside, candles flicker dimly, the air thick with incense and bodies that haven't bathed this week, or the last. You find a spot near the back and kneel on the cold floor. No pews for the common folk, just stone, knees, and penitents. A stern-faced priest in a rough brown robe appears at the altar. He begins chanting in Latin. You catch maybe 2 words, Deus and miserere, God and mercy. You could use both. The service drones on, a haze of chants and swinging incense. You feel yourself swaying, not from devotion, but from lack of food and sleep. Someone coughs beside you. The man in front of you sneezes directly into his hand and wipes it on his tunic. You scoot back slightly. The priest raises a silver chalice and everyone bows. You bow too, just slightly late. The woman next to you notices, her eyes narrow. It's subtle, but in this world, subtle can become serious. Historians still argue how much power the medieval church truly wielded over daily life. Some believe it was all-encompassing, others say it varied wildly by region and ruler. But one thing is certain, publicly defying the church was a fast track to being labelled a heretic, or worse. After the service, you linger near the door, unsure if it's over. A child cries. A woman mutters a prayer while rubbing a bone wrapped in cloth, supposedly a saint's toe. You watch as villagers kiss the bone, each one crossing themselves afterward. You hesitate. You don't kiss it. Another woman frowns. Later, someone mentions your reluctance. Word spreads faster here than fire in a hayloft. You now have a reputation. You're the hesitant one. Dangerous. Suspicious, possibly possessed. You try to recover by attending Vespers that evening. More chanting, more kneeling, more incense. Your knees are now red and sore. Your mind drifts. You try to stay awake, but Latin is like a lullaby wrapped in guilt. You nod off once. The monk beside you elbows your ribs with alarming grace. To make things worse, you forgot your rosary. You're borrowing one and it's missing 2 beads. You wonder if that's a sin. You wonder if someone is counting. And the rules go far beyond church walls. On Fridays, meat is forbidden, fish only. If you're caught eating meat, even unknowingly, you could be reported. Public penance, maybe lashes. Definitely whispers. You think back to that bowl of stew you ate 2 days ago. Was that rabbit? Or was it Monday? You pray no one else remembers. A quirky historical tidbit. The church owned nearly 1/3 of all land in medieval Europe. That's right, more than most kings. Monasteries weren't just spiritual centres, they were economic powerhouses. Farms, breweries, vineyards, sheep pastures, all under the holy banner. You try to blend in better. You join a candle-making group. You learn hymns by heart. You nod enthusiastically during sermons, even if you understand only every 10th word. But still, the suspicion lingers. You meet a man named Willem. He seems kind. He tells you his brother once skipped Sunday Mass and his cow went dry for a month. Divine punishment, he whispers. You nod gravely. You don't ask follow-up questions. Later, you overhear 2 women discussing the local priest. They say he never married. They say he owns too many goats. You don't ask whether those 2 things are related. Gossip in this village is like breathing. It's constant and possibly contagious. You make a mistake. You curse when you stub your toe on a rock. Loudly, in the middle of the market square, everyone hears. The priest hears. You're summoned. He sits you down. He speaks slowly, deliberately. He mentions temptation. He mentions fire. He gives you a penance, 3 days of silence and a fast. You nod. You obey. You don't speak for 3 days, no jokes, no muttering. No grumbling about your splintered bench or the goat that keeps headbutting your door, just silence. It's agonizing and oddly peaceful. On the 3rd day, you return to church, kneel and whisper a single word, forgive. The priest blesses you. The villagers watch. Your reputation is mending. Another fringe belief. In some areas, people believed that illness was caused by sin. If you were sick, it meant your soul was rotting. The cure? Confession or exorcism, sometimes both. You remember Brother Edwin's leeches and decide confession sounds better. You survive the week, you avoid eye contact with the priest's goat. You never forget to bow again. Section 9. You're finally starting to get the rhythm of village life, eat mush, move wood, bow at bells. But now you notice something else. The different weight some people carry. Not just literal weight, though, let's be honest, no one here is overeating. It's the invisible weight of gender, of role, of expectation. And depending on who you are, that weight might just crush you. If you're a man, your path is narrow but straightforward. Work, obey, provide, die. You toil in fields, repair tools, pay taxes in grain or labor. You might learn a trade or inherit your father's, but there's little room for dreams or rebellion. You are expected to endure. If you're a woman, though, life in the village is not just hard, it's tightly caged. From birth, you're someone's daughter. Then you're someone's wife, then someone's mother, and your entire existence is threaded through the loom of service, to family, to God, to the community. Not in theory, in every waking moment. You see her, Agnes, kneeling by the stream, scrubbing tunics that aren't hers. She's been at it since sunrise. Her own hands are red and cracked, her back bent. She's 23 and looks 50. You try to help. She stops you with a glance that says, "Don't bother, they'll just get dirty again." Women rise earlier, work longer, and often go unnoticed. They cook, clean, fetch water, tend children, birth children, and bury children. That last part more often than you'd like to think. Historians still argue about the extent to which medieval women had autonomy. Some ran businesses, owned land, or acted as midwives and healers. Others were locked in rigid roles with no room for deviation. The truth is, both are correct. It all depends on where you land in this muddy, male-led hierarchy. You spot a group weaving wool. It looks like a casual gathering. It's not, it's labor. They spin and knot and twist for hours, their fingers working even as they gossip. The gossip is about a girl, maybe 16, who spoke too freely to a travelling merchant. Nothing happened, but now her father won't let her leave the house. You overhear a phrase, "She's bringing shame." That phrase holds power. In this world, a woman's virtue isn't just moral, it's economic. Dowries depend on it. Marriages depend on it. Entire family standings hinge on what people think happened behind closed doors. You wonder, what if she did like the merchant? What if she smiled too long? In the 21st century, it's a harmless crush. Here, it's a sentence. Shame spreads like rot, and it rarely fades. A quirky fact. Some towns enforced curfews specifically for unmarried women, not for safety, but for purity. A woman caught out after dusk without a male relative? Suspect. Immoral. Potentially demonic? Yes, demonic. You watch as another woman, Marta, carries 2 buckets of water, one on each hip. She does this 3 times a day, every day. She's 7 months pregnant. You try to take one. She laughs, not kindly. Later you hear that a widow named Edith is being forced to remarry. Not because she wants to, but because her late husband owed taxes and the new match is willing to pay them. Love has nothing to do with it, neither does choice. You ask someone about divorce. They look at you like you just asked if birds can speak Latin. That's not a thing, they mutter. And don't think it's easier if you're noble. If anything, it's worse. Noble women are traded like parchment, and parchment costs money. Their marriages are contracts, their bodies are bargaining chips, their happiness is irrelevant. You pass a small cottage with a wooden cross over the door. Inside, a girl is giving birth. You hear the moans through the cracks. There are no doctors, just a midwife, a bucket of water, and the grace of whatever saint happens to be on duty. She screams. You flinch. No one else reacts. Just another day. You ask how old she is. No one answers. Historians still debate the average age of marriage in medieval Europe. For peasants, it was often later, early 20s. For noble girls, 14, sometimes 12. Consent was loosely defined, and the law, silent. You're still thinking about that when a man walks by, dragging his wife by the wrist. She stumbles, no one intervenes. You want to, you don't. Back in the square, an old woman sells herbs. Some call her wise, others say witch. The line is thin, and if the weather turns or the crops fail, guess who gets blamed? A fringe tidbit. In some villages, women weren't allowed to sing certain songs in public. Too suggestive. Too defiant. Too alive. You sit on the stump near the well, watching the quiet procession of labour, women with baskets, with crying toddlers, with bruises they don't mention. You want to ask them what they dream about, but maybe it's best not to know. Someone tells you Agnes is pregnant again. Fifth child, only 2 survived, she shrugs. God's will, she says. You nod, and suddenly your own burdens feel very small. Section 10. You hear laughter, not the usual kind, the bitter chuckle after a goat eats someone's laundry. This is light, nervous, real. You follow it instinctively, drawn like a moth toward the flicker of actual joy, and there they are, a boy and a girl, maybe 15 or 16, standing near the edge of the market square, talking in that way people talk when they might be flirting but are still pretending they're not. You smile. Then you freeze, because this is dangerous. In medieval times, romance isn't a game, it's a negotiation, an alliance. A transaction, sealed with goats, coins, or land. Flirting might seem harmless to your modern mind, but here it's a declaration of intent, or worse, a violation of someone else's claim. You watch as the boy offers the girl a small wooden trinket, crudely carved, probably from his lunch break at the carpenter's shed. She blushes, takes it. For 1 second, the whole world feels tender, and then her older brother sees it. The mood shatters. The boy stammers. The girl drops the carving. The brother grabs the boy by the collar and drags him toward the reeve. There's shouting, accusations, something about dishonor and improper advances. Historians still argue whether courtship in the Middle Ages was more structured or spontaneous. In rural villages, some teens had more freedom, but the moment it became serious, parents stepped in, fast. And sometimes with sticks. You learn this the hard way. Later that week, you smile at a young woman at the well. Just smile, she frowns, then looks around. Then turns and walks away. Within hours, someone tells you that her father thinks you're trying to entangle her. You don't even know her name. A neighbor corners you that night. He warns you, gently but firmly, you're new, you're strange. And the last thing you want is to be accused of intent to court without permission. Yes, that's a thing. You apologize profusely, to him, to the wind, to no one in particular, and for the next several days, you keep your eyes locked on the ground like a particularly anxious monk. A quirky fact, in some towns, holding hands in public was enough to be considered promised. Breaking that promise could mean a fine, or an official whipping, or being forced to marry. On the spot, you attend a village wedding later that month. It's not romantic. The couple stands stiffly while the priest mumbles blessings, and the father of the bride eyes the groom like a man surrendering his last goat. There's ale, some bread, and awkward dancing. You notice the bride is barely older than the girl you saw earlier with the carving. Her smile looks rehearsed. And then there's the flip side, those caught in improper situations. You hear about a boy who crept out one night to meet a girl behind the barn. They were found, publicly whipped, not for the act, but for skipping the formal courtship process. Historians still debate whether medieval people actually married for love. Some did, many didn't. Love was dangerous. It got in the way of useful alliances. It muddled dowries. It complicated land inheritance. And if love led to lust, that was the church's business. You walk past the church and see the priest giving a sermon about temptation. He doesn't say names, but everyone knows who he means. The girl from the square is now rarely seen. Her family keeps her inside. Rumors swirl, and then there's the question of public shaming. A woman accused of loose behavior might be forced to wear a marked garment, or be paraded through the village, or have her hair cut off. One girl, you hear, was locked in the stocks because she exchanged letters with a boy who never returned from his apprenticeship. Fringe belief. In some areas, love spells were punishable by death, especially if used by women. Because clearly if a man fell in love, it had to be sorcery. You try to stay invisible. You nod politely, speak minimally, never linger in conversation with anyone unmarried. It's like navigating a social minefield with no map and both shoes on backward. You hear about a couple who eloped to the next village. Their families disown them. The girl's brother travels to retrieve her, sword in hand. The groom hides in a haystack for 3 days. Eventually the matter is resolved. No one explains how. You decide that romance here is not worth the risk. Even married life comes with its own traps. Wives are expected to obey. Husbands are expected to control. If either fails in their role, the community steps in. Marital disputes are public. Punishments too. A man who strikes his wife might be warned or cheered depending on the village. A woman who disrespects her husband. Mocked, flogged, sent to her father in shame. Later you witness a man and woman walking side by side. He's limping slightly. She's carrying a basket. They don't speak, but their silence is soft, familiar. You sense something like real love there, subtle, quiet, resilient. Maybe that's the secret here, not avoiding connection, but hiding it well enough to survive. You walk home alone that night, watching the stars flicker behind the clouds. You think about love and rules, and what it must mean to feel something real in a world built on silence. Then a goose chases you. Back to reality. Section 11, you're itchy, and not in the philosophical, maybe it's time to reevaluate your life kind of way. This is very literal, very physical. You scratch your arm, then your leg, then cautiously your armpit. It doesn't help. Something has colonized your body, something that bites, something that multiplies. Welcome to medieval hygiene. Bathing here is complicated. Water is scarce. Soap is harsher than judgment. And the concept of personal grooming, well, it exists, but it's more survival than self-care. You want a bath. First, you'll need firewood, a tub, several gallons of water, time to boil it all, and privacy. You don't have any of those. Most people don't bathe regularly. Some don't bathe at all. They just layer more clothes and hope for the best. Historians still debate how often people actually bathed in the Middle Ages. Public bathhouses did exist, especially in early medieval towns, but they faded over time due to church disapproval, plague paranoia, and, let's be honest, the logistics of heating that much water without burning the village down. So what do you do instead? You rinse with cold water, maybe once a week. You scrape off visible dirt. You pick nits out of your hair. If you're lucky, someone's selling rosemary or lavender to rub into your underclothes to mask the smell. If you're not lucky, you go the rest of the month smelling like onions and existential fatigue. And toilets? Let's talk. First, there's no toilet. There are chamber pots, ceramic bowls you squat over in the privacy of your hut and then toss out the window. The street becomes the sewer. God is low, they'd shout in medieval Paris before emptying their pots. Watch the water, though really it's not water, and there's not much watching. You just hope you're not under the wrong window at the wrong time. You've already had a few close calls. Some larger homes have privies, stone or wood holes over pits. No flush, no privacy, and if you drop your only spoon down there, it's gone, forever. A quirky tidbit, in castles, toilets were sometimes built into the walls as guardrobes, with chutes that emptied directly into the moat. This, by the way, is why you never drink from the moat, or swim in it, or think too hard about it. You try your luck at the communal latrine behind the alehouse. It's just a bench with holes, and it smells like a war crime. You hold your breath, squat carefully, and try not to imagine what's under there. Or who's watching. You reach for something to wipe with. There's a rag hanging on a nail. You pause. Is that shared? Yes. Yes, it is. You suddenly remember moss. Moss is soft. Moss is clean. You make a mental note to find moss. Back at your hut, you strip off your outer tunic and inspect your arms. Red bites, lice, maybe fleas. Possibly both. You lie down, thinking the straw mattress will offer comfort, but it's alive, not metaphorically. It actually moves. You sleep poorly. The next day, you hear rumors of a bathhouse being reopened in the next village. You hike 3 miles, eager for a wash. When you arrive, it's just a wooden shed with a steaming barrel, a pile of herbs, and an old man charging 2 pennies. You pay. You lower yourself into the water, it's brownish, there are things floating, but it's warm, and it's water, and for the first time in days you feel human again. Then someone else gets in, with you. Bathing, it turns out, is a communal affair. Privacy is a modern invention. In some towns, men and women bathe together. In others, days are split by gender. But you're not in charge of scheduling. You nod awkwardly. The man next to you nods back. Neither of you speaks. There's an understanding here. Don't question it, just rinse. Someone hands you soap. It burns slightly. You use it anyway. A fringe belief. Some folks thought too much bathing weakened the body. Opened the pores to sin. Or worse, made you soft. The church eventually frowned on public bathhouses, associating them with loose morals and unspeakable behaviour. You just want to wash your armpits. You emerge from the bathhouse soaked, pink-skinned and reborn. The walk back is windy. You catch a cold immediately. By nightfall, your nose is running, your throat's sore and your skin still itches, but you're cleaner than you've been in a week. A victory. You return to your hut and change into your least dirty tunic. You scrape dirt from your nails with a stick. You rinse your mouth with warm ale. You floss with a chicken feather. Medieval dental hygiene. A disaster. No toothbrushes, no mint. No floss. Some folks chew herbs, others scrape their teeth with linen. Most just let their teeth rot and hope they fall out before they become fatal. You still have that aching molar. You poke it. It pokes back. You lie down, pull your cloak over your shoulders, and try not to think about what might be crawling across your pillow. The fire crackles. Somewhere outside, a pig snorts. You close your eyes and dream of plumbing. Section 12. The sun is gone, and with it goes your last illusion of safety. In the Middle Ages, night isn't romantic, it isn't mysterious, it's terrifying. It's when the familiar vanishes into shadows and the world turns silent except for the things that really shouldn't be making noise. You sit by your tiny hearth, the fire spitting low embers. Every creak of the wooden beams makes your shoulders rise an inch. You light a candle. It flickers, the flame dances wildly like it knows something you don't. Your hut doesn't lock. In fact, most village homes don't have locks at all, just a wooden bar across the door, or in some cases, nothing. Your only true security is the collective fatigue of your neighbours. Everyone is too tired to rob anyone. Usually, you lie back on your straw mattress. The thatch roof rustles slightly, mice, maybe rats. You pull the wool blanket up to your chin and try to relax. You can't, because everything changes at night. The familiar world fades. There are no street lamps, no flashlights, no distant glow of cities. Darkness here is total. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You can barely see the end of your thoughts. Suddenly a hoot, an owl, probably. Maybe, then a howl. That's no owl. Wolves aren't mythical here. They're real, and they're hungry. They prowl the forests just beyond the fields. They attack livestock, sometimes people. You remember the man with half an ear? He doesn't talk about it. A fringe tidbit. Many villages had wolf walls, wooden fences built to keep the predators out. Some towns even offered bounties for wolf pelts. Kill enough and you might earn a coin or two. Or a nickname. Wolf Slayer. Has a ring to it. You shift on your mattress and hear a snap outside. Your breath catches, just a branch, hopefully. Maybe someone walking home from the alehouse, maybe not, because night also brings thieves. No alarms, no police, just you, your door, and maybe your old hoe if you're lucky enough to have it nearby. You remember hearing about a girl in the next village, taken in the night. They blamed bandits, or spirits, or both. They never found her. Your candle sputters, goes out. The only light now is the moon through a sliver in your window cloth. You see your breath, you think of the church. Even that is different at night. Cold stone, long shadows, whispered prayers from late penitents. Some say the spirits of the excommunicated walk its halls after dark. Others say that's just the wind in the bell tower. Historians still argue whether belief in spirits and witches was uniform across Europe. Some regions were obsessed. Others were more skeptical, but here, in your freezing, itchy, dimly lit hut, you believe in everything. You whisper a short prayer, just in case. And then you remember, tomorrow is St. Bartholomew's Eve, a festival night. You crawl back out of bed, pull on your least damp tunic, and step into the darkness. The village green is lit with torches. People gather, laughter bubbling beneath layers of fear and fatigue. Children chase each other with wooden swords. A dog barks at shadows. A man juggles turnips. It's not impressive, but everyone claps anyway. Festivals are one of the few respites in this grinding life. They don't happen often, and when they do, they're a strange mix of holy and haunted. There's music of a sort. A boy bangs on a drum made of sheepskin. A girl plays a reedy flute. The melody is off-key, repetitive, almost hypnotic. Then the dancing starts. It's not elegant. It's stomping, spinning, flailing. You join in. You're terrible. No one cares, because for a few moments the villagers forget about wolves and work and water that smells like feet. A man dressed as Saint Bartholomew walks through the crowd, blessing bread and handing out ribbons. He winks at you. You're not sure he's qualified to be sainting anyone. Then the fire jumping begins. Yes, literal fire. You watch a group of teens leap over a controlled blaze in the middle of the square. It's tradition. For luck, or fertility, or to prove you're not afraid. One kid catches his tunic, everyone laughs. He's fine, probably. A quirky tradition. In some parts of Europe, people wore masks during these nights, not just for fun, but to confuse evil spirits. The idea was simple. If the devil couldn't recognize you, he couldn't curse you. You tie a strip of linen across your face. Why not? Midnight comes, the fire dies down, the music fades. One by one, villagers drift home, quieter now. You follow, feet sore, belly full of barley bread and weak cider. You pass the edge of the woods. You don't look in. Back in your hut, you relight the candle. The shadows are back, but less frightening now. For a few hours you were part of something. You laughed, you danced. You almost believed the world was soft. You lie down again, this time calmer, then you hear it. Creak, one slow, deliberate creak, wood shifting under weight, inside the hut. You freeze, you hold your breath, you reach slowly for the stick near your bed. But it's just the wind pressing the old wood, reminding you that this hut, like everything in this life, is barely held together. And somehow that's a comfort. You drift off to sleep, the last candle flickering beside you, its wax pooling quietly like the night itself. Section 13. You wake up with a strange taste in your mouth, not emotional regret, though you've got plenty of that, but something metallic, sour, and deeply concerning. Your jaw is worse. Swollen, hot, tender. You prod your cheek and feel a soft lump, a pulse. Inside your face, congratulations, you're now a medieval health emergency. You stumble to your feet, the floor creaks, the air is damp and your headache pounds like the village drum. Something's wrong. Really wrong, and you're out of options. You need help. Again, this time not from Brother Edwin. You tried his leeches already. Today you're going to the healer. She's not the priest, she's not the barber. She's someone else, a woman who knows roots and bones and where to find healing moss under the frost. Her name is Albrun. She lives just beyond the village, near the marsh. People visit her at night, whisper her name during childbirths and curses. Some say she was born with a call. Others say she talks to crows. You don't care what she talks to. If she can stop your jaw from turning into a second head, you'll let her chant in Sanskrit while dancing on coals. You find her hut. It smells like pine resin and boiling nettle. A crow watches you from the rafters. You enter. She says nothing, just looks at your face, nods once, points to a stool. You sit. She opens a box made of bone and wood. Inside, powders, dried leaves, strips of bark, and a small copper knife. She takes a handful of herbs, crushes them with a mortar, and mixes the paste with something dark and sticky. She smears it on your jaw. It burns. Then she wraps your head in cloth so tight your ears pop. 3 days, she says. No talking, no salt, no heat. You nod. She gives you a pouch of dried root. Chew, spit. Historians still argue about the legitimacy of folk medicine in the Middle Ages. Some healers had incredible knowledge, passed down orally, tested through generations. Others relied on superstition and accident, but one thing's certain, they were often more accessible and sometimes more effective than the university-trained physicians who wouldn't step foot in your muddy village. You pay with the only thing you have, labor. She sends you to fetch mushrooms from the birch grove. You go. Slowly, numbly, on the way, you pass a man lying in the dirt, clutching his side. No one stops. Everyone walks around him like he's a rock in the path. You kneel beside him. Ask what happened. He wheezes, says something about a fall, broken rib, maybe. You know enough now not to move him, so you run back to Albrun. She arrives with a curved stick, a cloth soaked in vinegar, and something she calls bone oil. She resets the rib. He screams until he faints, then she binds him and leaves him to heal, or not. There's nothing more to do. You learn this. Pain isn't treated here, it's endured. Back in the village, you hear coughing. Deep, wet, endless. A woman named Hilda, she's had it for weeks. People avoid her now. You learn a word. Consumption, later called tuberculosis. Here, it's a sentence. There are no antibiotics, no isolation protocols, just quiet horror. You visit Hilda, bring her a mug of broth. She smiles weakly, then coughs into her sleeve. Red spots bloom on the fabric. You step back. A quirky detail. Many medieval people believed illness came from sin. If you were sick, it was your fault. Your soul's corruption had leaked into your body. The treatment: prayer, maybe fasting, maybe exile. Some towns had plague houses where the infected were locked inside with food pushed through a hole, if they were lucky. If not, the door was simply barred. A mercy, they said. Your jaw throbs. You chew the root. You spit. Slowly, the swelling fades. You owe Albrun your life, but now you see how fragile that life is. A boy scrapes his foot on a nail. 2 days later, he has a fever. His mother wraps him in cloth and pours broth over his lips. He doesn't wake up. A girl twists her ankle. It swells. Turns purple, then black. Gangrene. The blacksmith cuts it off with a blade he uses for horseshoes. You ask how they sterilize tools. They don't. Fringe belief. Some thought illness came from miasmas, bad air. They wore pomanders around their necks, full of cloves and herbs, to ward off sickness. Rich folks carried oranges with holes poked in them. You just hold your breath and hope. You attend a funeral, the boy who scraped his foot. No embalming, no coffin, just a shroud and a shallow grave. The priest mumbles rites. The family stands silently. No wailing. No outburst. Grief is private. Or maybe it's just too common to stir emotion anymore. You walk home with a new heaviness in your chest. Back in your hut, you sit quietly. The fire is low. The herbs around your jaw have dried and crumbled. You remove the cloth. The lump is gone. But the memory stays. You understand now, in this world, pain is constant. Disease is everywhere. And healing is a gamble between folk wisdom and sheer luck. You whisper a quiet thanks to Albrun, to your own immune system, and to that root you chewed like your life depended on it, because it did. Section 14. It's just before dawn, and you've never felt smaller. You're standing in the middle of a field that someone else owns, holding a tool someone else loaned you, working to fill a granary you'll never touch. And suddenly the reality crashes in. You don't belong to yourself. You belong to the system. You're a serf. At first, it didn't feel so obvious. You just worked hard, followed orders, avoided staring too long at important people. But now, after a few weeks in this mud-covered life, the truth settles like a stone in your gut. You are not free. You're bound to this land. You can't leave the village without permission from the Lord. If you try, you could be hunted down, fined, or whipped. If you marry, you need the Lord's consent. If your child is born, it's automatically part of the same contract. You're not a person with rights. Your property that breathes. You glance toward the manor house perched on the low hill looming over the village like a smug landlord. You've never been inside. Few peasants have, but you've paid rent to it, in grain, in labour, in quiet compliance. Historians still argue about how harsh serfdom really was. Some say it was just the way things were, not as brutal as slavery. Others describe it as a life sentence dressed in wool and desperation. What no one debates is this: the feudal system controlled everything. Land was everything. The king gave land to nobles. Nobles gave land to knights. Knights took labour from peasants. Peasants had no land, only the privilege to work someone else's. You're in that bottom tier. A man beside you, Oswin, a wiry farmer with hands like tree roots, explains it plainly. You were born to dig. You'll dig till you die, and if you're lucky, they'll dig a hole for you. He smiles. It's not bitter, just factual. You ask what would happen if you refused to work. He snorts. Refuse. Then don't eat. Or worse, someone puts you in the stocks and your neighbours throw dung at your face. He shrugs. and not even the good dung. You glance back at the manor again. Every week the reeve collects dues, not in money, you don't have that, but in kind. If you catch 3 fish, you give 1. If you bake 10 loaves, you hand over 2. If you butcher a pig, you offer the best cuts. Always the best. You're allowed to keep enough to survive. Barely. A quirky tidbit, some lords enforced a banal right. They owned the only oven in the village. If you wanted to bake bread, you paid to use their oven. Same with mills, wine presses, or even communal pastures. It's like a medieval subscription model, but the only cancel button is starvation. There's a man named Gerald who once spoke out against the taxes, said the Lord Steward was cheating the villagers. A week later, Gerald was chained to a post, forced to kneel in front of the chapel and beg forgiveness. Everyone watched, no one helped. He left town the next day. No one knows where he went. You try to imagine escaping. Maybe you run off into the woods, find another village, pose as a free man. But if you're caught, they'll brand you, or worse, cut your ears, a permanent mark of rebellion, and then you're back in the stocks, again with the dung. And here's the catch. Not everyone is a serf. Some villagers are free peasants. They rent land instead of being bound to it. They owe less labour. Their children aren't automatically contracted. You can tell them by the way they walk. Slower, straighter, less afraid. But freedom comes at a price. You need gold or goods. Or a favour from someone powerful. And right now, all you have is a sore back and a half-eaten onion. You meet a travelling merchant. He's not bound to land. He's part of the guilds, the other system of power. He speaks 3 languages, wears boots that aren't broken, and doesn't smell like fermented cabbage. You envy him. He laughs when you say so. I may be free, he says, but every road has bandits, and every toll gate has a handout. Still, he can choose his road. You can't even choose your boots. The manor calls again. You're summoned with others to repair a fence. It's not yours. It surrounds the Lord's Deer Park, a private forest where only nobles can hunt. If you so much as look at a deer with hunger in your eyes, you could be punished. Once, a boy was caught with a rabbit in his sack, said he was starving. He spent 3 days in the stocks, and his father paid a year's harvest in fines. Fringe law, forest law in Norman England was so strict that even picking firewood from the wrong place could get your fingers broken. Not chopped, broken. As a reminder, you hammer the last nail, your hands bleed. That night you attend a gathering in the woods, quiet, secret. Just a few villagers and a woman who sings a song older than the language you speak. It's a lullaby about freedom. About the sky belonging to no one, about trees not needing permission to grow. You hum it to yourself on the way home. And for the first time, you don't look at the manor house, you don't bow, you don't curse. You just walk past because you know now you weren't born poor. You were born owned. Section 15, you need to get out, not just for fresh air, though that would be a miracle, but for your sanity. You've been in this village for what feels like years, and every moment is the same. Mud, labour, obligation, mud again. So you decide, foolishly, bravely, to travel to another village. Maybe a market town, maybe just far enough away to forget your name for a few hours. You pack your things, which is generous considering you own 2, and tuck a heel of stale bread into your belt. You head for the edge of the village at dawn, the mist still hugging the ground like a secret. The first few steps feel like freedom. Then you remember, you need permission to travel. You're a serf, remember, bound to land, not just by law but by expectation. You are not supposed to wander. You are supposed to toil. So when the reeve catches sight of you walking with purpose and a bag, you lie. You say you're visiting the smith's cousin in the next village. You don't mention you've never met the cousin or the village. He grunts. You're lucky. He's too tired to follow up. You keep walking. The path out of the village isn't really a path. It's more a collection of hoofprints, footprints, and hopeful guesses. The trees thicken. The birds get louder. Your breath fogs, and suddenly you're alone. It's a new kind of silence, not like the oppressive quiet of nighttime in your hut. This is wide-open quiet, ancient and indifferent. You feel small, vulnerable, alive. Then you hear hooves, you step off the road, a rider passes fast, cloak flapping, sword at his side. You make yourself small in the bushes. If he wanted to, he could kill you. Just say you were a thief, no one would question it. Historians still debate how safe travel really was in the Middle Ages. Some argue that most roads were patrolled and reasonably secure, especially near market towns. Others describe a world where bandits, wolves, and corrupt toll guards made travel a daily gamble. You cross a narrow bridge. It creaks. A man sits at the other end collecting a toll. He's not official. He's just large, armed, and clearly not in the mood to negotiate. You hand over your bread. He lets you pass. Further along, you find a small town, larger than your village but no city. A few thatched roofs, a church, a tavern, and, thank the stars, a market. You stare in wonder. Spices, cloth, metal tools, a man selling honey cakes. You nearly cry. You watch a juggler toss flaming torches. Children scream with joy. A woman plays a stringed instrument that makes you ache. For a moment you forget where you came from, then someone bumps into you, hard. Your satchel is gone. You spin, you shout. No one helps, no one saw, or maybe they did. Doesn't matter. You're in a new town. You're nothing here. You wander, dazed, until you find a familiar sight, a church. You step inside. It's grander than the one in your village. Stone arches, stained glass, even a small bell choir practicing in the back. You sit, not to pray, just to breathe. A friar approaches, offers you bread, not stale. Not dry, real bread you eat. He asks your name. You hesitate. He asks where you're from. You lie. He offers to let you sweep the church in exchange for a place to sleep. You accept. The straw in the storeroom is cleaner than yours back home. That night you dream of staying, but when morning comes, the friar gently tells you that wanderers raise questions. You're not in trouble. But you should go. Before someone else notices, you walk back, slower now. Tired, hungry, disillusioned. On the way you pass a burned hut, charred wood, black earth, a sign nailed nearby, thief. You pick up your pace, you make it back by dusk. The reeve doesn't ask where you went. But you notice your firewood pile has been moved, your water bucket is missing. No one speaks to you that night. You've been noticed. A quirky tidbit. Some villages used tithing groups, bands of 10 men who were responsible for each other's behavior. If one ran off, the others paid his fine. It made everyone suspicious. Everyone invested in your obedience. Now they wonder if you're planning to run again. They won't say it, but you feel it. The next morning, you're given the worst task, cleaning the ditches near the pigsty. It's not assigned, it's understood, a gentle punishment, a reminder you don't wander. You don't explore, you don't imagine. Fringe practice. In some places, peasants had to wear travel tokens, official bits of wood or bone stamped by a lord proving they had permission to be where they were. Without one, you were trespassing, criminal. Even if you were just looking for work, you scrub the ditches, the pigs grunt nearby. The sun rises behind the manor house, which still towers like a smug afterthought, and you know this. You can leave, yes, but you won't be welcomed when you come back. And you won't survive if you don't. Section 16. You're summoned to the village square. No one's told you why. But judging by the way people gather, quiet, wary, you know it isn't for music or prayer. You follow the others toward the worn centre of town where a rickety platform has been hastily reassembled. A few barrels. A raised plank, the stage if you want to call it that. You whisper to the man beside you. He shrugs and says one word, entertainment. This should be good. But then the reeve arrives, scroll in hand, flanked by the priest and 2 burly men with grim expressions, and in the middle, arms bound, is a boy. Maybe 14, dirty, trembling. You recognize him. He tried to steal an extra loaf during the festival last week. Everyone knew. No one said anything. Until now, they march him to the platform. The reeve unrolls the scroll and begins to speak in a voice that's more performance than proclamation. Words like theft, disgrace, punishment. The crowd shifts. Some look away, some don't. The sentence is flogging. You feel sick. A man brings out a whip, a short one but still cruel. The boy is tied to a post. Someone starts playing a drum, slow and hollow as the blows fall. The boy doesn't cry at first. But he does by the 4th strike. By the 6th, his legs give out. This is the show. Historians still debate how much of medieval punishment was intended to deter crime versus entertain the masses. What's clear is that justice was public, immediate, and painful. Stocks, whipping, pillories, branding. And sometimes worse. The whip stops, the priest mumbles a prayer. The boy is untied, limp. 2 villagers drag him away. The crowd disperses like dust. You stay rooted, cold, quiet. That was your morning, and the afternoon? Well, today's special. There's a festival duel. You don't believe it until you see the 2 men step into the square, armed with wooden staves. One is from your village. The other is from across the river. The grudge? A sheep. Or maybe a sister. Or maybe just boredom. They circle each other, laughing. Then the staves crack, and the laughter fades. The fight turns real. Teeth fly. Blood spatters. No one stops them, not yet. This is entertainment, remember? The crowd cheers. Someone takes bets. Children scream in delight as the men slam each other into the dirt. Eventually, one falls. The other stands, panting. A victor. There's no prize, just pride, and maybe the right to insult the loser for the rest of the year. You turn away. Later, you're invited to something called a pig chase. You don't ask questions. You find yourself in a muddy pen with 10 others, all chasing one squealing, greased pig. It's impossible. The pig is faster, smarter, and clearly enjoying itself. You slip. Fall. Someone lands on top of you. The crowd howls with laughter. The winner catches the pig by the tail and drags it out triumphantly. His prize? The pig. He hugs it. It bites him. The crowd loves it. A quirky tradition. In some villages, pigs were dressed in ribbons before chases. Why? No one remembers. But tradition, like mud, sticks whether it makes sense or not. And then come the mummers, a travelling troupe of performers in mismatched clothes and animal masks. They tumble into the square at dusk, singing off-key and reciting a bizarre tale involving a knight, a dragon, and an innkeeper with suspicious pies. It makes no sense. You laugh anyway. You need it. The children love them. The adults pretend not to. But you see the smiles. It's a rare moment when everyone forgets their place, their pain, their dirt, but it's short-lived. The mummers finish. They pass around a hat. Some toss in coins. Others bread. One man offers a chicken. No one questions it. Night falls, and now the bonfire, a towering blaze in the centre of the green, surrounded by drums, chants, and bad dancing. You join in, you jump, you yell. You throw a stick into the fire, just because everyone else does. Someone brings out ale, stronger than usual. You drink, it burns, you hear a song, a real song, not just noise. A woman sings, soft and high, in a language you don't know. It wraps around the fire like a spell. You close your eyes. Just for a moment, and in that moment you remember you're human, not a serf, not a labourer, not a tool or a punishment or a number in the Reeves ledger, just human. You open your eyes, the fire still burns, the crowd still sways. But you feel the ache returning, because in the morning the fields await, and no song can change that. Section 17, Dawn. The village is grey, damp, quiet, except for the soft groaning of bodies waking to another day they didn't ask for. You rise, slower than usual. Everything hurts, your feet are sore, your knees creak. There's a scratch behind your ear that might be from straw, or fleas. You don't even care anymore. You open the door. The sky is dull, as if it's still deciding whether to rain or just sulk. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys. The mud from last night's bonfire has dried into crusted footprints all across the green. A goose waddles through the wreckage like it owns the place. You stretch. You breathe, and that's when it hits you. You've made it. One full day in medieval times, maybe more. You've eaten what they eat. Slept where they sleep, worked, wept, danced and suffered. And now, standing here in your torn tunic and itchy skin, you realise something important. You wouldn't last another. Not a real one, not a full, unbroken season of this life, not when winter comes and food disappears. Not when plague rolls through and priests say it's because of sin. Not when your body fails and there's no help but a prayer and a rag soaked in vinegar, because here, life isn't lived. It's endured. You think back on the past days, on the porridge you couldn't identify. The cold that settled in your bones, the law that watched your every movement, the church bells that controlled your time, your words, even your thoughts. You remember the woman giving birth with no one but a midwife and luck, the child with the cough that turned into silence, the man punished for stealing a carrot. the girl punished for smiling too long, and you remember the moments of defiant joy, the pig chase, the bonfire, the old man who winked as he stole a honey cake. You remember the music that didn't quite hold a melody, but held the people together. You survived all of it, barely, but the toll is high. And now, even your dreams feel medieval, heavy, wet, flecked with ash and the sound of low bells. You turn to re-enter your hut, and that's when you catch your reflection in a pool of rainwater. You don't recognize yourself. Your face is thinner, your eyes are sunken, there's a layer of grime across your jawline. A bruise near your elbow, a smudge of soot across your nose. You look normal. For here, you're one of them now, but not really. Because deep down you still remember softness, choice, hot water, light without flame, the ability to sleep without fear of fire, wolves, or law. Here, the idea of freedom is laughable. You survive only through obedience, luck, and community. Any dream of rising beyond your station is just that, a dream. The system is too tightly wound. The roots too deep, and still they live, not just exist. They live. They find meaning in a shared laugh, in a bowl of something warm, in a song hummed under breath while working the fields. They don't think about breaking the system. They think about surviving it, enduring it, together. It's not a life you envy, but it's one you now understand, and that makes it harder. You eat one last hunk of black bread, hard, dry, but yours. You step into the square and watch the others begin their day, sweeping, feeding, hauling. There's a rhythm to it, not a happy one, but steady. Ancient, the reeve walks past. He doesn't look at you. The priest nods once. A child offers you a stick of dried apple. You take it. And for a brief moment you belong. Then you blink. The modern world returns. Electric light, clean sheets, hot coffee. Glass windows, the hum of a fridge, a phone buzzing on a nightstand. You're back. But something inside you is still sore, and somewhere, deep in your bones, you hear a bell. And now, finally, the fire dims, the drums have faded, the fields lie still. You've walked a day, maybe more, in a world built on labour and quiet suffering, where survival is a daily triumph and joy is fleeting but fiercely defended. You've felt the straw under your back, tasted the bland porridge of necessity, squinted at the sky to guess the hour, and knelt, aching and barefoot, on stone floors cold with the weight of ritual and silence. But now it's time to return. Let your body soften again, let the aches drift back into dreams, feel the gentle weight of your own blanket, clean and quiet. Listen to the sounds around you, no wolves, no bells, no boots in the dark, just the quiet thrum of safety. You made it through that day. And that's more than most could say. Let that thought ease you. Let the flickering torchlights of the past fade into candle smoke. The heavy doors close behind you. The chill lifts. The night is yours again. You've earned this rest more than ever. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let sleep take you gently, like the softest lullaby whispered behind chapel walls. Tomorrow you'll wake in your own world. But tonight you lie still, wrapped in ancient silence. And you are safe.